So the reason, the idea that Trump at this point or Biden could get to these party conventions and then not be the nominee is almost impossible, because each state has already decided who they were going to give their votes to represent what candidate they were going to give their votes to inside of the party's convention that's going to happen this summer.
Let's embark on the Arc Republic to hear current news that's published. More than gossip and chatter, covering current affairs that matter. We talk issues with professional views, all keeping you in queue. We wanted a higher vibe for these days and times, to free the voices and minds, reporting the sign of the times, so all can build. Let's shine, yeah.
Greetings, what up, wherever you are situated in this universe. My name is Dr. Kaya Niami Shivers, and welcome to Arc Republic News Podcast, where we talk about all things that matter to us. And yet again, we have the illustrious, the brilliant, the magnificent Dr. Sharice Janae. How you doing?
Girl, it's been fireworks.
Oh, it has been since the last time we talked. And so I'm so glad that you were able to sit down and carve out some time so we could talk about some really critical issues. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. But I hope your Juneteenth went well. We're coming up on July the 4th, the other Independence Day.
The other Independence Day, yes.
Yes. So I think it will be apropos to talk about and really start digging in deeper into these presidential elections. 2024 is a major election year. And so we will be following the presidential elections, which we knew and we talked about were going to be fraught with a whole bunch of things. And I think the debate that went on this past Thursday is an indicator of how funky it's going to be. And it actually, in my opinion, is going to get crazier. So let's set this up. So the Republican primary candidate, Donald Trump, who's the former US president, and the current president, who is the Democratic candidate, naturally, Joe Biden, had a debate in their first debate last night. And the reactions that I saw in the timeline, I had a lot of comments to say, but let's talk about what is your reading of the debate.
To be very honest, Joe looked lost. If we're honest about what he looked like, he looked lost. But I think in many ways that was intentional, right? And I say that not because there was any intentionality on either part for him to be lost, but we know that Joe Biden does far better with audience. He does far better with a studio audience or people. He does a far better job connecting when there's people. He does a lot better when there's a teleprompter, right? Because this is a man that we know for years has had a stutter. He does a lot better when there's a camera to focus on. If you remember, there is no studio audience. And so there was problems, I think, with camera placement. And if you look at how the camera cut to him several times, that wasn't the most favorable. We also have to remember that his campaign did say that he had a cold. And I appreciate the fact that the campaign did not lean on that or to make excuses about him having a cold, because an 80-year-old man has a cold, right? And so he came out looking weak at the beginning, and I feel like he picked up speed. I think his biggest problem throughout the debate was trying to make the fundamental decision of, do I answer the question that's being asked to me from the moderators, or do I rebut the lies that Donald Trump is spewing, right? Because the moderators were in no way fact-checking either one of them, but especially Trump, that made an elderly Biden make some decisions about what he was going to do and to say. On top of the fact that the man had no notes. There were absolutely no notes, no teleprompter, no engaging audience, right? No one camera to consistently look in, right? So I think all of these things were a disservice to Joe Biden and didn't make him look as strong as he could have looked. Now, let's deal with Trump. The biggest thing I think I have a problem with overall when it comes to Trump is when we're having this age conversation is Trump was a freshman in high school when Joe Biden was a senior in high school. So when we're having this age conversation, to me, it's just silly because Trump is 78 years old, right? And just because he puts on more makeup or tans better than Joe does, doesn't change the age dynamic that exists. The other problem I think I have when it comes to Trump is that he just lied. I mean, and not just lied about what he did, he even lied about things that he said. I mean, there wasn't a factual thing that came out of Trump's mouth. And so for me, it was the idea of, is this even a debate? Because a debate is supposed to be some part style, but most part substance, right? And the substance that was provided in many ways was absolutely ludicrous because Trump continuously lied. There was no substance that could really be dealt with, right? There was no tit for tat where I could hold up one person's substance against another because Trump didn't have any substance. He just had lies.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm going to just add a couple of things with my thoughts. I did not see the debate, but I was driving, so I heard it. So my reading of it is going to be audio. Several things. Listening to Trump on an audio perspective, Trump sounded a lot stronger because he responded sharper. He responded to me quicker. However, what he said was so elementary. I think an elementary school child could have more facts in what they were saying than Trump could have. He speaks in absolute terms. Everybody, all, it is, to me, it is so infantile. The way in which he talks about what he does, how he sees politics. It is from a misinformed perspective. It, for me, is scary because this person actually was a U.S. president and he brought absolutely no, now that is my absolute. He absolutely had like no facts to back up anything that he said in order to prove it. That is absolutely insanely problematic, right? I mean, honestly, if I were to just listen, I thought I was listening to a high school debate in total. So with how Joe sounded like a deteriorating older gentleman who was really trying to get his thoughts out. This is because I didn't see his movements. I didn't see what he looked like. And he couldn't finish his thoughts. And he didn't have time to finish his thoughts because of the time limit, right? So he just really
which goes to the format, right? Which goes to my point
right.
about the format, right? Is that you have 90 seconds to try to distill this down. We're talking about an elderly man trying to distill down, a very amount of nuanced information in 90 seconds. That to me is the problem with the debate, how it was set up to begin with, because normally in these responses, it's 2 minutes, right? It's 2 to 3 minute statements is how it's typically done. And then right. You get a 60 seconds to then rebut.
So, but I'm saying all that to say, my grandmother passed at 96. My parents cared for my grandmother from her was it her early 80s all the way until she passed. And my grandmother was sharp as a whip. And so I engaged with an elderly person who one had the clap back, you know what I'm saying, was very witty, was very sharp. So I'm comparing that personally. So audio wise, I'm not gonna lie, President Biden sounded very weak. He just in terms of stamina, and he did not sound like somebody who could carry conversation or engage or provide the energy that is needed in order to be the head of the state of one of the most powerful countries in the world. So that's what I'm taking in context.
But if you saw him today, right? If you saw him today, he had a rally in North Carolina, right? And none of those audio issues were any of his issues today, right?
But we all know, though, in a presidential election, you got to come strong. Every time you have to come, whatever it is, a debate, a speech, or whatever it is, you have to show. And a debate is significant. because people are not going to see the rallies in North Carolina like they're going to see a debate. Debate, there's all eyes on me, and so he performed and he spoke. It was very weak, but that's exactly what
No,
we're
he did
seeing.
perform
But I
poorly.
just
I
think
think
altogether
he,
it was just a horrible debate. I don't even think it was a good debate, because he wasn't. So on one hand, where Trump was lying, on the other hand, Biden couldn't finish what he was trying to say, so he came off incoherent. And so we can't say, well, you can't practice ageism against somebody, but then say, well, he doesn't have enough time, right? So you've got to step up to the plate, and that's
right.
why
And
I'll say that, right?
I guess this is my point about stepping up to the plate. I'd rather line up a Trump speech and a Biden speech against one another as my decision about, is he witty enough, or is he coherent enough. It is not, to me, because the president of the United States is not making decisions in a 90-second turnstile. Presidents of the United States are making decisions after much debate, after hearing two and three advisors come into the room, and at the quickest, a decision is being made in 30 minutes, not in 90 seconds. So I understand the inability of him to deliver and what it sounded like, and that being problematic because it was poor. And I'm not going to defend that it wasn't poor. But the idea that because I can't answer a question in 90 seconds means that I'm not sharp enough to run the country is where I think that I divulge, or I separate. Because again, when we look at Joe giving a speech at the State of the Union, which was 60 minutes to, I think it was like 78 minutes, stood up there flat footed with a teleprompter. If we look at him at rallies with a teleprompter, right? When he has a set things that he's going to say and how he's going to respond, he has no problem keeping up. He has no problem understanding what the issues are. The issues then become when I have to synthesize what I'm going to say in a 90-second clip, with a speech impediment, without then notes, right? And I'm not going to in any way say that he performed well last night, because Joe Biden did not perform well like last night, and there's nothing that anyone can say that's going to change that reality.
Right, but let me say this though, but we all know in politics, it could be one thing that could either make or break the candidate. Obama's speech on race, you remember that speech he said on race was, after that, his numbers amplified. Remember back in the day when Howard Dean ran? This is back in the day, and he did something and he did this yell, woo, woo, whatever, and they thought it was like the weirdest thing. And then his numbers decreased. So we all know that like this pop culture thing can, seep itself into how the public receives or interprets a candidate. But
And
I
I'm
think
and
this
I'm
is.
glad you brought up Obama, because Obama made a comment even about it. If people remember, when Obama debated Romney the very first time, he lost. Right,
Mm,
he did not do
okay.
well, and
Mm-hmm.
and he lost. And Obama put out on social media last night um, that that bad debate performances happen, but the choice between the two candidates are clear, right? And so I agree that there is some political weight to this. But let's also remember, we are in January. I mean, we are in June.
Mm-hmm.
If there is going to be another debate, it'll be in September.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
supposed to be like I think September 10th it's scheduled for.
it's scheduled
Right
for,
before
right,
9/11. This is going to be
right,
interesting.
right. So let's think about it this way: we had the debate. We had a debate right before July 4th and right before the Olympics. So the likelihood of many people even remembering this debate, that are the average voter, not me and you, Kai, and not the more intelligent voter, right? But the average person remembering this
Mm-hmm.
debate is slim to none, because most people don't even remember that Donald Trump was responsible for January 6th. If you ask people about that, they can't even remember that, and that was just 4 years ago. So I agree that speeches and that debate performances can have lives that live on, but in this pop culture every 90 seconds something's hot environment, the idea of his bad performance from June lasting all the way to November, I think is slim to none.
Mm. But I do want to add though, all I could think about when I was driving and listening was Cat Williams talking about we elected weekend at Bernie's. That's what I can say. Cat Williams is he is the brother. What do you call it? Brother Damas. Brother Damas predicted it. But also, I also want to emphasize too, when you were talking about Obama, this is Obama as a kind of new political, he's in this new arena. Biden is very well seasoned. He 80 something. He's been in this, so he knows. So there's really no excuse. And I'm saying that because I think we need to, as much as we need to be critical on both sides. But I
No,
also
need to be critical on both sides, and I think the Democrats ran them too hard. If we're going to be critical, the problem is that they kept him up there at Camp David. They practiced him and rehearsed him and ran him too hard, like he was a fucking 40-year-old and he's 80. Yeah. And you ran him into the damn ground. No, let's just be. If you want to,
Grandpa sleep. Papa got sleep.
Papa got a rest. Like, listen, if we're going to be critical, the issue is that you kept him up there at Camp David. You drilled him and acted like he was a 40-year-old or a 50-year-old candidate. You tried to pump all this information into him instead of keeping it very elementary and keeping him with zingers that would then answer questions and then deal with Trump. You didn't do that. You tried to pack all this shit with policy. You tried to overly prepare him, and he got up there and he got stuck, because then he had to make some split decisions that he couldn't make in that time frame. Whose fault is that? That's the Democratic Party's fault, and it's the fault of the Joe Biden campaign and team, who made him look weak last night.
I agree.
because of what they decided to do.
I agree. I said whoever is on this man's campaign, I hope that they are hiding under a rock. They need to be ashamed of themselves to put this man in here. He just was wholly unprepared. However, we're talking about somebody who has probably more age than most of the people on the campaign, so he knows exactly what it is. Apparently, Biden is known to be very stubborn, as well. So, he actually created this situation for himself too. He is the elder.
Well, let me tell you,
he wants to be the elder statesman. He needs to be the elder statesman. And so,
but let me tell you, because he's that elder statesman, to your very point, because he's that elder statesman, you know what he did after the debate? He went to Waffle House. He went to Waffle House
and took a nappy.
He went to Waffle House. And he got back into his known environment where he does well. Mm-hmm, he shook hands, and when people asked him how he did that night, he was honest. He said, "I didn't perform well tonight." Okay. Right? Mm-hmm, so, and if you watched watched his rally today in North Carolina, he addressed it. He said, "I'm not young. I've gone from being the youngest person in the room now to being the oldest person in the room. Mm-hmm, I don't speak as well as I used to. I have a stutter. I don't. But what I do know about me is this. I wouldn't sign up to do this job if I physically didn't think I could. And I now know, and what I do know is I know I can tell the truth. But I can be honest about the fact that these are the things I did not do well. Mm-hmm. And to me, what he was saying in there indirectly is I probably should have listened to my staff more and did more. But to your very point about being the senior statesman, being the senior statesman means that the buck stops with me, and it also means that I take responsibility when things don't go well. And in my opinion, that's what he's done. He went to Waffle House, connected with people, because that's what he does well. He has no problem connecting with people. And when asked the honest question about how he did, he was honest and said, "I didn't perform well last night. Mm-hmm. I didn't perform well tonight."
Right, because he had that's what he did was a totally boomer thing. What we talk about, like this generation.
Well, he's in the greatest. He's even older than Boomer, but yeah.
Oh, he's in the greatest. Oh, okay. So
yeah, he even behind them. Child. He older than that. Damn, he older than Boomer.
But I must say, this is a critique. When we started these conversations about the political environment, this is a critique I think that Biden made evident. The Democratic Party, parties on both sides, but we're talking about the Democratic Party, needs to have a clear pipeline of preparing people to move into place, right? So I want to say that I was like, oh my gosh, because the conversation was 4 years ago when he was running is that, well, who could beat Trump? Who can be a person to beat Trump? So in those 4 years, who has been prepared or who has been groomed or whatever it is in order to take out a Trump, because Trump is only probably going to be one of many, right? or this trend or this lineage of pseudo resistors. I don't know what you want to call this. With that being said, I'm
They're
going on
lining up young
history.
people. They're lining
But
up young people.
with that being said, I was impressed by Kamala Harris. I was impressed because I don't think I've ever said that about sorry, Kamala. I don't think I've ever said anything. My bad. I'm okay. The hood named you Kamala. I'm gonna call you no. But I we call you Kamala, Kamala. All right. So I was impressed by her response when she was being interviewed with CNN. Now I said, growth that I do see in the 4 years is her growth. So I thought that was really interesting in terms of how she kept it very focused. It's exactly what you said. Her premise, or what she emphasized, was he might not have performed well. I'm not going to endorse that performance, but the substance and what he's brought in these 3.5 years is proof to his leadership. So I have to say she performed well. What are your thoughts? Did you hear her talk?
I definitely heard her, but I think that's my overall point about this entire thing. About, again, going back to your point about him being a senior statesman. And I said this on air, on the radio in the DC area. I'm 80 years old. And if we look at who he's filled his cabinet with, he has filled his cabinet with younger people of color, or younger people that are from the rainbow of what it looks like to be America, which is why, in many reasons, people are so mad to begin with, right? Because as a senior statesman, I understand my job is not to then come in here and pad my stats. My job is to use my expertise and my wisdom to then encourage the young bucks to do the things that I can't do. If we think about not even just who's appointed to the bench, let's think about Kamala. Let's think about Mayorkas. Let's think about all of the folks that are in his cabinet. We are talking about, let's talk about the fact that Hakeem Jeffries can't be the leader of the Democratic Party as the minority leader without a Joe Biden and a Jim Clyburn stepping aside. A lot of these things, I'll say it to you this way. This is the best way I think it'll encapsulate it in political terms. In California, and you've heard me say this several times, in California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was a face, who was a celebrity, many ways like Trump, came in and tore up California as a state, bankrupted the state. And Schwarzenegger tore it up, right? And the answer many people did not like. And the answer to solving that problem was to reelect old ass Jerry Brown. Why? Because Jerry Brown understood the volatility of the tax structure in California and understood how to get the state back solvent. And what did Jerry Brown do? He righted the ship and turned it over to who's in there? Gavin Newsom. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. We're seeing an elder statesman who has righted the ship of the country, who's going to continue right that ship. And I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't serve the entire 4 years and decided to resign at year 2 and let Kamala take over. I would not be surprised by that. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised by that. What I'm saying is this. This is not a new playbook. This is what's necessary when you're dealing with one of the most complex economies in the world, when you're dealing with a global landscape that's literally on fire. Do we want somebody as unstable as Donald J. Trump to be at the helm? We do not. We want a senior statesman who is smart enough to know that I am old, I need younger folks around, and I need to give them the best wisdom for them to be able to execute. And if nothing else happened last night, what happened for Joe Biden was his reminder of how old his ass really is.
Those are good points. I want to say this, and then I want to move to another segment of this post-Biden-Trump election and how people are now calling for I'll put it together, Biden and Trump. We call it a bump, right? How for Biden to step down. But before I say that, I wanted to bring up the point. These are really good points. I wanted to Oh Lord, I forgot the daggone point, girl. But let me just but let me just go back. Let me then go back to what has happened. So shortly after the elections, I'm listening to the channels, and the channels are saying that Democratic leadership, elected officials, are extremely worried after the Biden performance that there will be a slaying in the elections if they are tied or tethered to Biden. And now what you're hearing is a push for Biden to step down and to replace him with a candidate who is more viable against Trump. That's what I wanted to say with the debate. Let me tell you how serious Trump is and how much he believes in his voters. He did not prepare for the debate. He did not prompt. He just showed up and showed
talk.
out and talked. This is how much he values and respects the people that are voting for him, that he does not even prepare in the least to go to a debate, right? So I don't think people understand how irresponsible that is, how that is political suicide. And it makes me, it falls back to the first go round of him running, and how the insider said he kind of took this as basically another reality show, another version of his reality show.
But Caillou, you're just making my point as to why walking away from Biden is the wrong choice. If the Republicans can allow a candidate to stand up there who has not in any way taken any of the issues seriously, has not come in any way with a playbook, and if you were to watch them both walk onto the stage, neither one of them looks spry walking up there. Neither one of them looks. I'm just telling you, he looked slumped over, and he may have sounded better, but he didn't look that much better than Donald Trump. I mean, he did not look that much better than Biden did. What I'm saying to you is that are the Republicans talking about walking away from their nominee? Are the Republicans talking about walking away from somebody who has 34 felonies? Are the Republicans walking away from somebody who historically has been proven to have had sex with a porn star, who said grab him by the pussy, who has all of these federal lawsuits, who have defamed women, who has played a huge role in rolling back Roe v. Wade? I mean, the Republicans are not backing up, so much so when we want to talk about what Joe Biden sound like, Mitch McConnell has died on national television 4 times. Ain't nobody said nothing about him moving away from being the majority leader. They let him come do it on his own. I guess after this one, I'll sit down. That's after 2 white girls have had to tap him on the shoulder twice. Hey, you're frozen. Forget getting a coherent sentence out. The man froze on national television. Not once, not twice, 3, 4 times. So when we're having this ridiculous conversation about Biden needing to step aside, it's funny to me because the other side's not having that conversation. Why? This is my biggest problem with Democrats. When you decide that you're going to put together a rainbow coalition of people, it always means somebody's going to be mad. That's the reality of it. The reason the Republicans can stay on message so much easier than Democrats is because who they're going after is a very small set of people. They're not going after a larger swath of people. When you decide that you want to be all things to all people, it is very difficult to stay on a message and get everybody in the tent and in agreement. So, of course, we're going to hear these rumblings. It would be surprising to me if we didn't hear these rumblings. The question then becomes, who is going to use the stick to get everybody back in line? Because you do not have to be tethered to Joe Biden. You have to be tethered to Joe Biden's policies. And all of Joe Biden's policies have made all of you guys winners. There is no place in this country that Joe Biden's policies haven't made all the down ballot candidates winners. We can look in Michigan. We can look at, I just drove this country. My husband has moved. I just drove this country. There is not an interstate that is not getting major work being done on it right now. That's a winning policy. So when these down ballot Democrats are crying or saying all of what they're saying, don't tether yourself to Joe Biden. Tether yourself to Joe Biden policies, because those policies are going to win you every day of the week.
That's a good point, but let's keep it 100, as we say. Biden has frozen. He has had senior moments that have brought concern too, as well. So, that is important. I also want to say this though. People who are now expressing concern, I know we have, like when I talked about the Cat Williams joke, Cat Williams tells this joke at the beginning of the Biden presidency. So if a comedian who's seeing this is saying that it's not the fact that Biden is an elder is an issue, but what people have been seeing, what has been happening to him and how he looked has been the issue. This has been conversation that has been going on. So if there hasn't been any intervention in terms of how to do it, you stuck like Chuck now. Figure it out. You're gonna have to figure it out because we are 4-2-3-2-1 with these elections. But I want to talk about this pop culture response in moving out Biden. We had a very interesting conversation in the pre-show, so I'm going to let you set that up and explain what's happening in the social media space because I be in these fields with these farmers and not really on social media. So please let me know what's
Yeah.
going on.
So in the social media space, what we're seeing a lot of is this understanding or this idea that the populace needs to take control and demand either not necessarily another candidate from a traditional party structure, but to choose a candidate from a grassroots perspective and push that person in many ways to the White House because the populace, right, that a democracy is about the populace, and then the populace voice then being represented in that president. And I think that is the most ludicrous piece of propaganda that's being spewed by folks in this social media space. And the reason I think it's absolutely ludicrous is based upon a comment that you made previously, that the concerns about age on both sides, right, on Donald Trump's side at 78 and at Biden's side at 81, these were age concerns that were brought up well before this debate on last night. And there have been plenty of levers then to pull, then to make adjustments in many ways to the electoral college that actually controls how we get to having a president. If January 6th taught us nothing else, it taught us that the electoral college is king because Trump decided that he was going to have Mike Pence to denounce the electoral college votes in his ceremonial task as vice president during the January 6th committee, or during the January 6th ceremonial vote on Capitol Hill. So we know, right, the American public knows that the electoral college is what actually elects a president. And if we wanted that process changed, we had 4 years to go about providing said change. There are different avenues to do that, but the most expedient way to do that would be to get an amendment to the Constitution, something that could have been done in a grassroots effort and way had we started that in 2020. But why did we not start it in 2020, Kaya? Because we were in COVID. Because no one gave a damn about how old Joe Biden was when he was saving our asses during COVID. None of this conversation was happening then. We waited until 2022 after we got on the other side of COVID to start having these conversations, then about the electoral college and then what to do. So what I'm seeing right now in the social media sphere is in many ways some of this revisionist history where this idea that they've been suppressed or they haven't been given the opportunity, right, to push against the system. There's been plenty of time to make a different decision about how to then abolish or get rid of the electoral college that would have then been more supportive of a populist candidate that could have then been naturally homegrown out of the grassroots efforts than being hamstrung by either one of these parties.
So let me say this. There has been, after today, this is Friday, and we're talking, the day after the elections, they said that the Biden team said Biden is not stepping down. But to engage and help people understand, let's just say Biden might wake up and say, this is not for me. Is that plausible? No. Why?
It's not plausible because then that would put the Democratic National Convention into a tailspin walking into their party convention. Let me explain it to people. The reason that you open this segment saying that Donald Trump is the presumptive nominee for the Republican Party is because the Republican Party has not then decided that he is their nominee. The way that this works is that the states have primaries. So let me break this down for those that don't understand federalism. In our system, we have two places of power in our government. We have states power and we have federal power. When we're talking about the president of the United States, it is the idea that the states have to come together to make this decision. The states coming together has been used in this electoral college format. States then run primaries. You can have an open primary, a closed primary, or a caucus, right? And we started out this season with an Iowa caucus. We started out with Iowa caucuses for Democrats and Iowa caucuses then for Republicans. It is at that time that we get people's names on the ballot, that we then make a decision about then who the state can put up at the party convention then as their nominee. This is why, if people remember, Colorado said, we're not even putting Trump on our ballot. He cannot even be on our ballot. And the Trump apparatus said, wait a minute, that's unconstitutional. They took it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court made the decision that Colorado could not ban him from being, could not do that. And then Donald Trump was put back on the ballot in Colorado. So the reason, the idea that Trump at this point or Biden could get to these party conventions and then not be the nominee is almost impossible, because each state has already decided who they were going to give their votes to represent what candidate they were going to give their votes to inside of the party's convention that's going to happen this summer. The Republicans is first, the Democrats is second. And because we are dealing with an incumbency in Biden, there was no challenger on the Democratic side that decided that they were going to challenge. We're going to challenge Joe Biden. There were challengers on the Republican side, and so the reason that this idea of there being these two candidates that or somebody we could just put in there, it doesn't work that way. It's an entire process on inside of the party apparatus that's then attached to the state that then makes these decisions about then who goes inside of the who then goes inside of the party apparatus structure for the state. Now, people are then going to say, well, what about the third party candidates? Third party candidates have to meet a certain threshold, but that threshold to then become a part of the ballot in November is dictated by the state. And if your third party candidate does not meet the minimum threshold of votes inside of the state that they would have had to meet at the primary level, then they will not then be listed on the ballot come November.
Right, and that's Vivek Ramaswamy. There were a couple of yes, there were a couple of people who ran.
Yeah, but Ramaswamy and Haley were the two strong contenders. Well, after DeSantis dropped out, right? So it was DeSantis, Haley, and Ramaswamy were on the Republican side as far as challenging the nomination of Donald Trump. And there were no challengers on the Democratic side because Joe Biden is seen as the presumptive nominee because he was currently in office.
Right. And so, and then we have good old Cornel West.
Right. And those are the third party candidates. We also have Jill Stein, who's running for the Green Party. And then I can't remember what party Cornel West is running under. But again,
it's like Democrats for Independent, something like that. Yes.
There's these third party candidates. But the problem again, and I'm not going to get into every state because every state's threshold is different. But at the states decide what threshold that candidate has to get to even then be on the ballot. So this whole idea of a third party candidate, you have to be able to meet the threshold in the state to even be on the ballot. And Cornel West was not on the ballot in many states. The same way Jill Stein was not on the ballot in many states.
Last question about this, and then we'll move on. But what can happen if Biden is removed from the ballot or does not run, or even a Trump? What are some things that can happen?
I mean, the
Other
only way
than
that
death.
I was about to say the only way that happens at this point is death. Like, I think that people are not understanding that we're having this conversation as if it's a conversation to really have. The time to have that conversation is gone. If you wanted to have that conversation or push for that would have happened in a party. That would have happened in the primary season. That was at the beginning of this year. I guess that's why I'm so frustrated as a political scientist for people who are so late to the bandwagon and have all of these opinions. If you were upset about who was on the state ballot, then you should have then been speaking to your state apparatus and state apparatus in January, February, March. All of these things could have been adjudicated and dealt with in January, February, March. At this point, the only thing that removes Donald Trump or Joe Biden from these ballots at this point is death.
Thank you so much for your insight, Dr. Sharice Janae.
Thank you for tuning into Arc Republic's news podcast. We are a small media organization with big news energy and cover topics from a global lens and work to uncover rich and robust stories. Any contribution towards our operation will fuel a much needed media revolution. So how can you do that? You can send money to our fundraising platform, which is arc-republic.fundjournalism.org/donate, or Cash App us at $ARC Republic Media, and stay tuned for ARC Republic News.